Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about a game that literally had a great community at its palms, only to completely fumble the bag and throw it all away. This is the rise and fall of Splitgate. If you were playing first-person shooters a couple years ago, you already know how big this game was, but recently the sequel launched and everything just completely fell apart. To really understand how bad things got, we have to look back at the glory days of the original Splitgate. Back in August 2021, this game was an absolute phenomenon. It hit a massive all-time peak of nearly 68,000 concurrent players on Steam, and it was all anyone on Twitch or YouTube was talking about. The concept was brilliant because it was so simple. It was essentially the classic old-school gunplay of Halo mixed with the Portal mechanics of the Portal games. That was it. There were no confusing classes, no crazy hero abilities to memorize, and no loadouts. Everyone spawned in with the exact same weapons and you had to fight for map control to get the power weapons. It had a true identity and players loved it because it stood out from the incredibly crowded shooter market. It just felt pure and genuinely fun to play. But then the developers over at 1047 Games decided they needed to go bigger. They looked at the massive amounts of money being made by games like Apex Legends and Call of Duty, and they wanted a piece of that live service pie. So they shifted all their focus to making Splitgate 2. The problem is, instead of taking what made the first game great and just polishing it, they completely changed the core formula. They gave the sequel a massive identity crisis by trying to please absolutely everyone. They added custom loadouts for the Call of Duty fans, they put in round-based game modes for the Valorant players, and they added hero factions with abilities to try and win over the Overwatch crowd. Suddenly, in a game that was supposed to be about clever portal placement, you had players throwing down shield walls, popping healing bubbles, and using stim packs in the middle of a gunfight. They even shoved a forced battle royale mode into the game. By trying to chase every single modern gaming trend, they stripped away the unique identity that made their game special in the first place. The warning signs that this game was going to be a disaster really started flashing bright red during Summer Game Fest in 2025. 1047 Games clearly spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a premium spot on the main stage to show off their brand new Battle Royale mode. This was their golden opportunity to hype up the gaming community. Instead, the CEO Ian Pralks walked out on stage wearing a politically charged hat that read "Make FPS Great Again," and basically spent his time mocking the rest of the shooter genre. It was incredibly arrogant, totally tone-deaf, and it rubbed a lot of gamers the wrong way. People saw right through the corporate PR talk, and it completely killed the hype for the game before it even launched. When Splitgate 2 officially released in June 2025, the reality check hit the studio like a freight train. The game managed to pull in about 25,000 concurrent players around the time the Battle Royale mode dropped, but the hype died almost instantly. Players were complaining heavily about the bloated mechanics, the clunky map design that discouraged using portals, and the ridiculously overpriced microtransactions. Within just 1 month of release, the game lost a staggering 96% of its entire player base. By July, the player count on Steam was struggling to even hit 900 concurrent users. Because the game bombed so hard financially, the studio was thrown into total chaos. 1047 Games had to carry out 2 separate rounds of brutal layoffs in just a 6-week period between June and July. The financial situation got so bad that the co-founders actually had to stop taking their own salaries just so they could afford to keep the lights on and keep developing the game. And to make matters even worse, they made the incredibly unpopular decision to completely shut down the servers for the original Splitgate game. They claimed that keeping the old servers running was costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars, so they pulled the plug. Basically, they killed the beloved original game that actually had a dedicated fanbase in order to force everyone over to a sequel that nobody wanted to play. By the end of July 2025, the developers realized they had messed up big time. They pulled Splitgate 2 back into beta status and announced they were doing a massive soft reboot. The CEO publicly admitted that they had bitten off way more than they could chew by trying to cram 3 different games into one. They spent the next few months stripping out the annoying character abilities, fixing the progression, and trying to revert the game back to its roots. In December 2025, they officially relaunched the game under a brand new name, calling it Splitgate Arena Reloaded. But honestly, the damage was already done. The gaming community has a very short attention span, and once you lose their trust, it is almost impossible to get it back. When Arena Reloaded launched in December, it was a total ghost town. The relaunch peaked at just under 2,300 players on Steam, and since then the daily player count has just been floating sadly between 300 and 900 people. The game essentially has no presence on streaming platforms either, with Twitch viewership hovering around just 100 viewers on most days. And the wild part about this whole situation is how the studio reacted to the failure of the relaunch. Instead of taking accountability for ruining their own franchise, the developers put out a public statement complaining about the community looking at the low numbers. They literally said Steam charts don't measure fun. They tried to cope with the terrible launch by saying that Steam is only one platform and that raw player counts don't capture the actual feeling of the game. But let's be totally real here. When your live service multiplayer game cannot even hold onto 1,000 players on the biggest PC gaming platform in the world, the charts are absolutely measuring something, and it is a lack of fun. It really is just a sad story for a game that had so much potential. The original Splitgate was proof that you don't need a bloated battle pass, hero abilities, or crazy loadouts to make a good shooter. You just need a fun gameplay loop. But corporate greed and the desperate need to chase every single industry trend completely destroyed the franchise. They alienated the loyal players who loved the simple arena shooter vibes to try and capture a casual audience that never showed up, and that sucks. Let me know if you guys even bothered trying the sequel when it came out. I'm curious to know your thoughts, and as always, keep playing the games you actually enjoy, get rid of that FOMO, and I will see you all next time.